Hi, Anna. Can't hear you. You're muted.
It's probably just as well. Talking about my appearance. So.
You look great. Did you see your pictures in the report?
Oh, no.
Oh, flip through it.
No,
I didn't have time to add a directory of the pictures with captions, but you're beautiful.
You're so sweet.
Beautiful.
So are you going to kind of do a little intro bit and then I can kind of walk through the policy?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh my gosh, Anna, you look great.
Right?
I love
your
both of you.
bangs. I mean, you usually have bangs, right? But they're so cute.
They're very short and they're multicolored now.
I've been thinking about doing bangs like that. And if it looks as good as it does on you, like, we'll see.
I think for this one, we should probably encourage folks to stay on camera and muted so that we can have, sometimes it helps to have everybody on camera so we can have good discussion. And it encourages more people to have this be the main screen up on their computer, because there's a difference between the number of people who are actually attending and listening, and sometimes if you have them have the window open but they're doing other things, it looks like they're less active, and that can be a little disheartening. But I think we have a great crew. Welcome everyone as you're coming in. I'm going to encourage everyone to turn their cameras on, because we have such a great community and I want to see all your faces. We'll stay muted. Just going to leave some time for folks to come on in. We've already got a pretty good crowd starting. I love it. So welcome everyone again. This is our last session and arguably maybe our most important, one of the most important, because this is where we come together to look at all of the different policy priorities that our members have suggested that CABC support, and they are all worthy of support. I just want to really get a sense from all of you what you think about the different policy proposals, and especially if you have questions to ask. So I'm going to put the link to the tool in the chat right now. As you join us, please leave your camera on. We want to be able to see all of us who are participating in the conversation. And I'm now going to introduce Anna Hasselblad. Anna is the chair of CABC's policy committee, and she's going to be facilitating this session. And we're so happy to have so many sponsors, organizational sponsors of some of the policy proposals that we're going to be talking about. Please use the considerate form. It's linked in the chat. Put your questions in there, and we will try to answer them as we go along. So I am seeing a lot of great faces. Please turn your cameras on so we can all see each other. And Anna, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to, as always, be in community, even when it's virtual and we're all figuring out our tech stuff. So as we kind of move through this space, we're going to be using a couple of cool tools. If you've got questions, unmute yourself, raise your hand, ask. Everybody's here to help and chime in. And this is really, a space for conversation. We're going to elicit some of that conversation directly from some of the champions of the specific policy issues that we're going to go over. Give sort of like the elevator pitch, the why do we care so much about this? Why does it matter? And then we really want to ensure that folks are having time to ask questions to help you determine what position do you want to recommend CABC take. And so, perfect. Thank you for sharing the, so this is a visual on the screen of the considerate tool that we are going to be using and walking through today. The link is in the chat, so you can access it that way. We do need you to actually go to the link and access it so that you could register your position on each of these issues. So I think with that, you know, Andrea did a lovely introduction of myself, but I do just want to say, you know, as an active member with the California Asset Building Coalition, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to hear from everyone. It's really important, and I think we've dedicated a lot of time and effort, and I give huge props to Andrea and others, Melody, the fellow on the team, to really kind of pulling together intentional work to ensure that voices are represented in all of the things that we do, all the positions that we take. And so, you know, there's opportunity to really reflect your personal and organizational values back to us in how we prioritize the policies that are before you today. And I do just want to say all of them are important. All of them are aligned. All of them matter. What we are trying to figure out in particular is, where do we as a coalition want to focus some of our energy in the coming year? So it's tempting to maybe say everything is, you know, the most important. And that might be emotionally true. That might be very true. But we also need to start to make some decisions about where we collectively put our energy. And so thinking about the phrase, a mile wide and an inch deep, we don't want to be just an inch deep. We want to do this work collectively together really powerfully. So the more that we can direct our energy collectively together on a few priorities where we really think we can make a difference, I think that that's going to benefit us. These are all things that we care about and are going to pay attention to. So with that little intro spiel, I am going to go ahead, and mostly what I'm going to do is facilitate and ask folks to chime in about each of the priorities. And Andrea, feel free to give me direction too if I'm going off script or anything here.
Yeah, I think you're doing great. I just want to give people a chance. If you open up the link in a separate window, you can create your account here. It's free, it's easy, it's fast. Take a minute to do that. And it'll ask you just to please be civil, and I'm sure everyone will be able to do that. Doesn't ask for anything other than just your name and email address, and that you take the civility pledge. But once you're there, then you'll be able to, here's how you work it. So I'll give you an example. You just take your mouse, you click on the issue that we're talking about so we can follow along. Once you click it, it will expand like that to provide more detail. And these bullet points here are the impact goals that CABC members defined at last year's symposium, which we are now using to ensure that the policies that we support hit as many of those as possible. And that includes people who are directly impacted, have some leadership in the advocacy, that the proposal has an anti-racist impact, that it'll impact multiple generations, either by serving people of all ages now or by promising intergenerational wealth. And you can see some of the other ones as we go along. Once you've expanded it, you can take your mouse and hover over the lever here, and you can move it up or down depending on where you want to put it. You can use the bubbles to give your cons or ask a question here or give your pros, and that way we have a nice conversation going about the topics. So I'm going to now exit back. I'm just going to go hit my arrow key, go back to the original platform where you can see all of them. And we're going to get through a lot of these, as you can see. So with that, I think I've talked a little bit long enough to get folks logged in, set up your account. And okay, Anna, we're ready.
Okay. So if folks can just let us know if you're having any problems in the chat, if you're having a hard time accessing or need another run through, we're happy to go over it again. And this is a super cool tool. It's very intuitive once you get in there. So I think, and I realize I'm in there and I've been adjusting my lever and sort of saying where I think the priorities should be. And so what I'm looking at is probably a slightly different order than what you all might be looking at. There's ways to reorganize the order of the priorities listed based on like what's trending or what has the highest average response. So we might not be going in the exact same order as what you see on your screen. So just sort of follow along and find the topic that we're talking about. So I'm just going to start at what's on the top of my screen, which is raise childcare provider subsidy rates and compensation. And so what I'm going to do is invite those advocates who really champion this issue, maybe show up in a leadership space on this issue, to share a little bit more about the issue itself. I would love to do very little talking. The less you hear from me, the better during all of this. So is there someone who can come off mute and be on video ideally that can walk us through why raising childcare provider subsidy rates and compensation is an important issue for us to consider?
Anna, I hate to, oh, I'm sorry. Let's do that. But then after that, can we follow the order that's on the shared screen? Because that will help me to expand details as necessary.
Okay, yeah. I was saying, I was using what I'm seeing, but okay. Let me navigate back. Yes. Would it be easier just to start to
Yes.
do a little quick refresh and start at the beginning of what's listed here?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, we can do that.
All right. I'm going to expand it so that people can see some of the details. And
Great.
I think we've got Andrew Cheney. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is
Andrew, unmute yourself and tell us about this.
Okay, I'm ready. Am I able to share slides or just go a couple comments?
I don't know that we were prepared to have you share slides, but if you've got them, I feel free. We can.
Let me just put it in the chat for folks who are interested, and then if you're able to click on that, you can follow along. Just very briefly, thank you very much, Andrea and Anna, for having the Cal EITC Coalition. So I'm Andrew Shane, he, him pronouns. I work with Grace and the End Child Poverty Coalition, but wearing my hat as a Cal EITC Coalition co-lead. So there are a couple slides for historical context so you can really see the impact. I appreciate the values that Andrea laid out just briefly in terms of the coalition, and you can really see some of the growth, really about a tenfold impact, and then some of the particular policies on the second slide that really speak to the coalition's commitment to trying to make these policies as equitable and inclusive as possible. Several expansions of both the Cal EITC as well as establishing additional tax credits targeting families with young children and foster youth, but in particular with the Cal EITC, there was a multi-year successful campaign I know a lot of you were involved in to make sure that those filing with ITINs were not excluded. So looking at the two policy priorities, starting on slide 3, these are the two policies that are summarized for your slider. The first is to establish a minimum Cal EITC credit of at least $300. So the vast majority of households who are eligible, file their taxes, and claim the Cal EITC are getting a lower amount. This not only is just a basic matter of economic justice to make sure that there is a more robust minimum, but this will also help us communicate. A lot of folks on the call probably are involved in tax prep and VITA and trying to get folks connected to those resources. We'll be able to tell people, right, that this will be the minimum that you're eligible for, and really try and drive uptake and utilization of the credit and get people to file taxes, which we know can unlock lots of resources for households. So that is the first of the two. And then the second of the two is to expand the Young Child Tax Credit, the YCTC, to all Cal EITC eligible households. And that's three categories of families: those with children who are aged 6 to 17, or 18 to 24 who are students, or households with children of any age who have permanent and total disabilities. And you can see that in total, that's about 62% of all households right now are currently excluded from the Young Child Tax Credit. So this creates, for example, a cliff effect. If you have children 0 to 5 when they turn 6, I know lots of us on this call probably have kids, they don't get any cheaper, right? And so those households that are still income eligible, trying to make sure that they're not blocked from that $1,000 a year to that household. And then in particular, thinking about this from the use of state funds to try and improve the equity of our safety net and basic income supports. On the last slide, you'll see that there's two lines, and that the darker line is the federal child tax credit in 2022. So this, I know a lot of us are still fighting to reinstate the expanded child tax credit, but should that not be the case, the phase-in means that the lowest income families actually could get zero child tax credit or very little. And so expanding the California YCTC to all Cal EITC eligible households, would help address that inequity and target resources to those who need it most, given the gaps in the federal safety net. So that's the overview. I don't want to take up too much time, and glad to answer questions later. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I will confess my personal and professional bias certainly aligns with this one in particular. It's just because of what we've seen in the data and lived experience showing how impactful tax credits can be, assuming the family is able to claim them for free. That's a big caveat. Oh, I see a hand raised, Bianca. I think you need to unmute.
Sorry, I don't know why my video is so zoomed in here, but I'm on camera. One of the reasons why I'm inclined to support this measure is because of the data that you mentioned, Anna, that demonstrates how effective these types of tax credits are for alleviating poverty. And I don't remember what the stat is. Maybe Andrew has it on hand in his slides, but the rate at which it does reduce poverty in California is pretty astounding. So I'm wondering if it might be helpful to share that number with folks if anyone has it.
I just stopped sharing screen. So Andrew, if you have your
I'm glad
slides
to pull up
available,
the PPIC data.
yeah,
I don't know if we have Alyssa Anderson on hand. Otherwise, it'll take me just a sec. I can grab the PPIC data. They do break it out by particular program. But Alyssa, if you have anything else, please chime in. It's a great point, Bianca.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of perhaps the most compelling data is to look at what has been accomplished by the federal child tax credit, by which we can take quite a lot of learnings and apply them to California, adjusted for total amount, right? But when the expanded child tax credit was rolling out to families on a monthly basis, we saw that nationally cut child poverty in half, like just in half. Really pretty incredible. And then when that expanded child tax credit went away, we saw a direct correlation for those same families, a 25% increase in hunger, like almost immediately. So those are some of the data points. I just gave myself goosebumps. Can you do that? Can you give yourself goosebumps by talking about data? Apparently you can, y'all. But it's not, it's data, but it's families, right? It's children. So those are some of the data points that always jump out to me. And I know that we've got a bunch of good things to talk about, so I don't want to, I do want us to make sure that we're kind of staying on track and getting to the next thing. But if there's any other questions, please put them, or comments or data points, feel free to put them in the chat. And then be sure to, use that blue toggle bar to indicate your prioritization. Okay, so now we are going to move to raising childcare provider subsidy rates and compensation. Man, I'm just pumped about all of these priorities, I tell you. And I'm not sure who we have on tap to discuss this, but if you are on the call and ready, if you can unmute yourself and share a little bit about this policy priority.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Blakely. I'm manager of public policy for an organization called Crystal Stairs. We're located in the South Los Angeles area. We've been serving the community for over 40 years, serving 50,000 families annually. In terms of raising childcare provider subsidy rates and compensation, it's really important to elevate one that when we talk about subsidy rates, we're really talking about those families who are most impacted by systemic institutional barriers that don't allow for them to, live in a range or be able to be in a position to be able to afford childcare at a private rate that is very expensive. And for as long as childcare has been around, for as long as subsidy childcare has been around, there's been a real issue on how we're able to pay our childcare providers who are essentially serving our children. And it's not necessarily just childcare, right? We were talking about practitioners that are really developing our children from birth to 5. What's also really important about this and why it should absolutely be supported, well, there's a few things. One of the things I want to definitely highlight is one, when we talk about subsidy rates and we talk about compensation, on one side of it, when we talk about subsidy, it allows for accessibility for families of color, specifically Black and Latinx women who are most in need of these childcare services at subsidized rate versus their counterparts. I'm speaking to this a little bit more specifically because in the 50,000 families that we serve annually here at Crystal Stairs, we have the highest concentration of Black families we support and also Black childcare providers. And of course, we serve a significant amount of Latinx mothers, families, and so on and so forth, and providers. And so what's really something that we're moving toward right now is not just talking about why it's so important to make sure that we have high quality, accessible childcare for our families and our children, but what's really breathtaking that that we really have to double down on when we talk about elevating this policy priority is that this is a real racial inequity issue that we're talking about. Because if we look at our childcare workforce currently, it's 75% women. 75 and 90%, or excuse me, 75% women of color, 99.9% women in general. And there's a lot of inequities that are being faced currently with our way we compensate our providers due to the lack of investments that have gone on historically. What we recognized during the pandemic is that childcare providers were the heroes of the entire pandemic. And I don't want to say it as if we passed the pandemic because I just read a report where I saw a 75% spike. But however, we know that our economy, we know that the ecosystem of our community cannot operate unless we are supporting the childcare system that not only develops our children, but continues to employ a workforce that is made up of women, but also women of color. And so the last time that we really saw compensation and an increase in the amount of money that's paid for those childcare providers who take on subsidized childcare was it happened in 2018 or 2016, and then it moved to the 2018 RMR, regional market rate, just last year, which means that this current way that childcare providers are being compensated is from a very old model of being paid, right? This doesn't include the 11% inflation before the current inflation that we're facing. This doesn't include the fact that the state of California has a minimum wage requirement of $15, but childcare providers are not grouped into that sum because, again, we're talking about subsidized rates in the whole childcare system and very complex policy. And we'll get to that another time. But the biggest point I really want to pull and really want to be able to get everyone on this call to really understand is that there is a real historical injustice that has been done here. And it's going to directly impact, obviously, our workforce, which is, again, how I mentioned, made up of women of color, Black and Latinx more specifically. But however, it really creates an opportunity where we do not see those who are most impacted by institutional racism, those who are most impacted by system changes that don't necessarily hear and resonate with the cultural affirming spaces that are needed for their families. Those are the ones that are going to be most impacted if we do not really elevate this, not only to our state, but really make this something that's really made aware across the nation. And lastly, I just want to highlight something that's going on with the state is that as ECE policy advocates, early education policy advocates, we have had a workforce quality group that talked about really how are we creating a report and delivering this to the legislature in partnership with the California Department of Social Services to look at how are we paying childcare providers based on the true cost of care and not just a kind of nominal number that we're going to assume based on, again, how I was talking about the regional market rate, but really looking at what's the true cost of care, right? We're talking about childcare providers that are not only caring for our children birth to 5 and beyond that, but we're talking about childcare providers who are small business owners, right? And we're talking about childcare providers that also have mortgages to pay. They also have lights that they have to keep on, although they're serving families that have those same inequitable issues that they're facing disproportionately. And so in closing, we really need to recognize that this is, childcare as a policy, early education policy, cannot be spoken about, really elevated in terms of policy platforms in a vacuum. It directly impacts everything that happens within our ecosystem of not only just the economy, but just how our society operates. We could not return to work if we didn't have childcare for our children, right? And we're not really seeing them developmentally ready if we don't have the proper high quality care, whether it's family childcare homes or centers or different other means and ways of being able to deliver these childcare services. If we don't have these spaces available, and they close, we're not only seeing a inequity with the workforce, but we're also seeing those who need the subsidized care not have the opportunity to have accessibility to high quality childcare. So, I really look forward to working with you all to answer any questions that you may have. But this is something that on the ECE side, we've been pushing for many, many years. But at this current juncture, we really are looking at how are we really elevating compensation and subsidy rates, because those who are most marginalized, those who are most living below the federal poverty line, right? And those who are really impacted by a lot of other systemic institutional barriers will be directly impacted by this, not only just from the workforce, but also from the family's accessibility to it. So that's all I'll speak on it. I could go on for hours, but thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And I think, all of these topics could warrant a full day deep dive. But I appreciate a little bit of brevity there. And it looks like we've got a couple of questions for a bit more on specifics in the comments. And so I also am trying, part of my job as facilitator is to keep us on track time-wise. And so I'm wondering, Justin, if you have either a quick answer or something that you could reply in the chat about a little bit more of the specifics of this proposal. Looks like Sasha and Bianca were wanting a little bit more information.
Yeah, just with the interest of time, I could definitely reply in the chat if that works for you all, or I can speak.
Okay, yes, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
That was excellent. And yeah, I mean, oh, gosh, I just get riled up about all these issues. Maybe that's why I'm facilitating, is I'm just gonna encourage everyone to, get active on everything possible and learn together. Okay, should we move on to our next issue? And I wanna make sure I'm following along with what's actually on the screen that everyone sees. So we are moving on to reducing reduce cost sharing for covered California enrollees. So can we have our healthcare expert come off of mute, be on video, and share with us why this is a high priority for you and your organization?
I don't know that we were able to
Is
get
Anthony on?
I don't think Anthony's on.
Okay.
Oh
but
man, I can try.
Yeah, go ahead, try, Bianca.
Okay, I wasn't prepared to chat about this. So healthcare, you know, folks were on the last panel, you know, I think it was pretty clear that healthcare, affordable healthcare is a benefit that impacts everyone in California, everybody, absolutely everybody. It's a poverty issue, it's an entrepreneurship issue, it's a kids issue, it's a working families issue. It hits all of the points of CABC's, it's an equity issue. It hits almost all of the points of CABC's kind of considerate tool key that we've provided here. But what this policy proposal will do next year is take the $304 million that is already in a healthcare trust fund. These dollars have been collected from the individual mandate penalties that exist in California for not having health care. It will take that $304 million and it will apply it to make healthcare even more affordable for folks specifically that make between 400% and 600% federal poverty levels. So in layman's terms, 400 to 600% federal poverty level is about $50,000 to $75,000 for one person. So currently we have federal tax subsidies through 2025 that are making healthcare more affordable, continues to make healthcare more affordable for folks in this range who are previously facing a benefits cliff when it came to this financial assistance. But these dollars are already in the fund. It's dedicated for affordability. And this proposal simply requires that the state use the dollars that have already been collected for this purpose and applies it to continue to make healthcare more affordable for low income and middle income Californians.
I'll add to this that the biggest impact will be felt, if passed, by the covered California participants who opt for the silver plan, which has the highest premiums and deductibles. And so if that is the coverage that you're able to afford, it actually, you know, can oftentimes put you in a worse off position because the premiums and you know, you can have a $500 deductible just off the top, and we know that most Californians do not have that kind of money for emergencies, you know, for any reason, and that often people are having to choose between paying for a tire that blew out on their car, which is not going to get them off to work on time, or many other competing basic critical needs for their families. So this is just a little bit more history. This did pass last year and was vetoed, I think because of a misunderstanding about whether this would be new spending or not. But as Bianca has said, the money for this is already available. So it would not actually be new spending. And we want to see this pass again, and this time have it be met with a signature. So I'll just stay here. I don't know if anyone else can add to any of this, or if we've got questions. Please feel free to add your questions here on the Considerate tool itself. As I mentioned in the chat, we will have this tool open for at least another month as we work with organizational sponsors on what they need from CABC or would like from CABC. And I will tell you an inside secret, which is that many of us keep going back to this tool and seeing how it evolves with time as people weigh in with new questions, with new reasons. It's a great way to be actively in touch with what's happening on a policy proposal. So with that, I will just close my comments out here, and Anna, maybe we can have someone else pitch in if they have any more to say about this or questions, and then I'll leave it to you to move us along.
Great. Thank you, Andrea.
Anna, can
Yes,
I just say one more thing really quick?
totally.
Just really quick, I also think that this is a great proposal for us to support fully, because the Health for All Coalition is incredibly adept at keeping us in the loop. I really think that this will be, an easier lift, simply because it has the backing of the Health for All Coalition, and they're very effective. So I just wanted to flag that as kind of a logistics reason that might, factor in here.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. These are all important things to consider. So I have to lean in very close because I can't figure out how to zoom my own freaking screen because I'm technologically challenged. But next item up is supporting accountability for the Racial Equity Commission. This is the one established by Governor Newsom's executive order. Thank you, Andrea. Executive order on equity. So this is sort of an extension of some of the work that was supported through SB 17. That bill was not signed. However, the Racial Equity Commission, I would say, is a direct result of that effort. So I think do we have someone on tap to talk about this priority? If so, please unmute yourself.
This is a policy that's, the implementation here is being led by Next Gen Policy, and Elena Santamaria gave a great discussion on the panel yesterday about it, and it does exist by executive order. So the next step is to ensure that folks are named to the commission. And so I know that NextGen is collecting names for potential commissioners. You can forward those to us, to me at CABC, and I can forward them to Elena. This wouldn't be new legislation, but if you want us to, CABC can participate more proactively on how the commission gets actually implemented, right? And as we know, not least because of the study that Melody released and that CABC released, and we talked about at length yesterday, when organizations and institutions make racial equity commitments, the proof is really in the implementation and how it gets done. This is one of those things that could very easily become sort of a self-congratulatory, pat ourselves on the back, look at how progressive we are, but it does have the potential to be real if we get the right commissioner's name to it, and that we stay abreast of how it's developing, keeping accountability, transparency, and public pressure, letting them know that we are watching, and weighing in on what sorts of standards and procedures and infrastructure they create for the commission, so that they can do meaningful and true racial equity work. So I'll just end my comments there. Yeah.
Oh, I want to chime in on this one because this is something that I've had the pleasure of being involved in a little bit. Really also looking very much at Next Gen for leadership on this, and just chiming in when we can. This is something where, we think when we say policy, a lot of times we think, legislation or a budget ask. This is something that is administrative advocacy and policy. This is something that is on the, as Andrea was just saying, on the implementation side of things. It's an opportunity for us to look at sort of how does implementation actually go right, or how do we hold it accountable if it doesn't go right? And this is something that is really deeply at the systems level. It's a lot of work. This is a decade plus of work for this commission. This is transformational if the right people are in the room talking about the right things and moving in the right directions. And there should be lots of discussion about what is the right direction, what are the right moves, are those in fact equitable, are the are the voices that need to be heard, in fact, given the platform. And so when we think about where we put some of our energy, particularly during a year where we know the budget is going to be a little bit rough, this might be a spot where advocacy on the administrative side is incredibly valuable to set something up to be successful for the next decade plus, and where we can really demonstrate our collective value and voice. So I just wanted to kind of put that extra plug in because I do think that this is, it's maybe a little bit different than the others in the way that we might apply ourselves, but I think it's worthy of consideration. And I think that there might be opportunities for us to push forward really important conversations. Any questions or comments about this from folks? Okay, not seeing and hearing any immediately. Obviously, keep it coming in the chat if you need to. The next one is stopping the criminalization of poverty in California, ending unjust fines, fees, and debt that strip resources from people with low incomes and communities of color. I am hearing that maybe somebody has come off mute already, ready to maybe go on this. So if that's you, take it away.
Hi everyone, that's me. My name is Michelle Lau. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the senior manager of the Financial Justice Project. We're housed in the Treasurer's Office in the city and county of San Francisco. So first off, thanks just so much for making space for this discussion. So at a high level, this policy priority addresses fines and fees that are levied by the government on Californians. So many of these fines and fees show up in our criminal legal system. And for people who can't pay, people face additional fees. Their driver's license can be suspended. People can be arrested and incarcerated for failure to pay. And what we've done is we've created a two-tier system of justice where poor people, and particularly communities of color, are disproportionately punished because they cannot afford these fines and fees. So I wanted to lift up 3 concrete efforts today and highlight the work of a few different coalitions who are advancing this priority across the state. So the first is around criminal administrative fees. So there are a number of fees that are charged to people exiting the criminal legal system, everything from fees to rent your ankle monitor, fees to be on probation, drug testing fees, the list goes on. We call these fees kind of high pain and low gain. So very high pain for people who can't afford to pay them, resulting in debt, that they don't have the money to pay. And for people exiting the criminal legal system, just creates kind of huge barriers for their reentry. And they're also very low gain for government. So these fees have very low collection rates, and not because people don't want to pay them, but because people are just too poor to do so. And this is a really, regressive way to fund our criminal legal system. So Debt Free Justice California is a coalition that has come together around this. We've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years, eliminating about 40 fees in the criminal legal system so far. And we've also wiped about $16 billion in debt off of Californians. So next year, Debt Free Justice California is planning to do a few things. One, kind of continuing to eliminate the remaining criminal administrative fees. There are about 40 that remain. And then also working on ending juvenile restitution and identifying an alternative public source of funding for victim compensation. So that's kind of one area. The second area is around the high costs of incarceration. So as background, people in jails and prisons are charged very, very high prices for basic services like phone calls, emails, video calls, food, hygiene items. Everything has just a very, very high cost when people are incarcerated. And most of these costs are paid by families, particularly women of color who are supporting their loved ones inside. And there's research that shows that about 1/3 of families go into debt trying to cover these really high costs. So there is a coalition called the Keep Families Connected Coalition that came together last year, or this year actually, and we passed SB 1008, which made phone calls free in prisons and juvenile facilities. So we're really excited about that. And this also builds on local efforts in San Francisco and San Diego to make jail phone calls free. And next year, the coalition is planning to address the high costs of canteen items in prisons in California, as well as support local efforts to make jail phone calls free and eliminate commissary markups at the county level. And then the last and third area I'll touch on is child support that's owed to the government. So as background, there are federal rules that require that safety net aid for families in poverty, like cash support for CalWORKs, get repaid through parents' child support payments. So that means a huge chunk of child support payments, hundreds of millions of dollars every year, that should be going to children in poverty never make it to them. Instead, they're intercepted by our government. And this is a huge, disproportionate impact on Black and Brown families in particular. So the Truth and Justice in Child Support Coalition has been working on this for a number of years. This year, we got the win of California will stop the practice of intercepting child support payments for families who currently receive public benefits, as well as families who previously received public benefits. And that will put approximately $350 million back in the pockets of low-income families. And then next year, what the coalition is planning to work on is, one, eliminating existing government-owed child support debt for low-income parents, two, lowering the state interest rate, which is currently 10%, so a huge add-on to the debt that people owe, three, resolving currently suspended driver's licenses because of failure to pay child support debt, and then four, setting fair orders based on ability to pay or a specific percentage of the parent's income. So I'll just end by saying this is a really important racial justice issue. It's an important economic justice issue. These fines and fees really disproportionately impact people of color and people with low incomes in California. So happy to answer any questions. I'm excited to work together on this.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Any questions or comments from folks on this proposal? It's really, it's one of those things. I know I'm not technically surprised, but I'm always like, oh God, the things that we do to people. Like, why? It's just like things that don't make sense. I'm
blown away by, I remember when I first learned that child support payments were intercepted by the government, and that just goes against everything that you think child support payments should do, right? And that they count against other benefits programs. I mean, it's just and changing that actually puts real dollars. I mean, did I hear you say $350 million? Like, we would never be able to pass new programs that would provide an additional $350 million to folks. But by eliminating this, this practice, that's essentially what you've done is given people much more resources. So I really appreciate all of your work on this.
Okay, so if no other questions or comments right now, we can go ahead and move on to the next proposal, which is Safety Net for All. And do we have Sasha still on the line to present on this? I think I saw you earlier.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Safety Net for All. Sasha, take it away.
Sure. I also had slides, but I don't need to share. I feel like we've talked about this for those who've joined the past sessions, but the Safety Net for All coalition was started in 2020. We've been working for 3 years to create a state program that would provide unemployment benefits to excluded immigrant workers. And just to give a little bit of context, because I think some things that most people might not realize, we know that people who are undocumented and working in California represent 1 in 16 workers in the state. But also our state is incredibly interconnected. 20% of all Californians under the age of 18 either live with someone who's undocumented or is undocumented themselves. 20% of all Californians. under 18. So this is something that, doesn't just impact excluded immigrant workers, it impacts all of us. Also, undocumented immigrant workers contribute roughly $3.7 billion every year in state and local taxes. And the biggest thing I learned through this campaign and this work is that California employers actually contribute around $485 million in unemployment insurance taxes on behalf of undocumented workers every year, even though those workers don't see a cent of the benefits. So people who employ undocumented workers are paying into our unemployment insurance system to fund our system. But because of the federal ties to that system, those workers can't access any of the benefits. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change that on the federal level. But what we can do on the state level is create a state-funded excluded workers program that would provide unemployment benefits to these workers. It would look very similar to unemployment insurance, but would also be different in a couple unique ways, just to account for the fact that these workers work in sometimes unique situations. So it would be a flat rate of $300 a week, as opposed to for anyone who's received unemployment insurance or benefited from that system, especially during the pandemic. It's traditionally a percentage of your salary that you have to recertify regularly over and over again. Because that many of these people might be paid in cash or through Venmo and PayPal, things like that, that's a lot harder to do. So it would be a $300 a week flat payment. And that number is based on our estimates of what undocumented workers would receive if they were eligible for UI. And then they would also be able to receive this for every week of unemployment up to 20 weeks. Normal UI is 26 weeks. But when we looked at the numbers, the majority of people who are undocumented are unemployed for 20 weeks or less. And so we kept it at 20 weeks. Just to give some highlights that I think you all might be interested in, there is a very powerful coalition behind this campaign that mobilizes like hell. It's pretty amazing, and it's a very, very much a worker-led coalition. There is a group of workers that makes decisions on big strategy decisions related to the campaign, whether to move forward or not, and have actually also advised on what the bill language looks like. Last year with our bill, we had AB 2847. A lot of you on this call helped support that bill and really appreciate your support. We had over 120 organizations as part of the coalition. We got the bill passed through both legislative chambers and got to the governor's desk, where it was vetoed because it wasn't included in the budget. But we had really strong legislative support. The coalition did a petition with 25,000 signatures, sent 5,000 postcards to the governor's office, brought 400 people to Sacramento for a day of action and lobby visits, did 35 lobbying visits, and over 1,000 calls to different offices in the Capitol. For this coming year, we have some exciting news that I'm sharing kind of for the first time outside the coalition in this space, so please keep it to yourselves for now. But Senator Durazo has agreed to be our champion on the campaign. So we're really excited given the wins on Health for All and the work on some of the other stuff she was working on last year. There's now a little bit more capacity to engage with her office. So we're really excited because last year we only had an assembly champion, and so now we'll have a Senate one as well. We do plan on reintroducing a bill and doing a budget campaign. For those who worked on the budget campaign with us last year, due to the changing rates of unemployment, our budget request is less than half of what it was last year. So last year was $690 million. This year it's $350. I know that's still a lot with budget shortfalls. There's chances that our estimates could even be significantly less than that, because we are incorporating the Employment Development Department's estimates on the cost of administration, which we think are astronomical and don't have to, but we're using them for now. They estimated that the cost of administration would be around $150 million. But in our talks with other states, third-party vendors, as well as other cash relief programs in California, we think the cost of implementation is a tiny fraction of that. So it's possible that our budget request is actually even a lot less than $350 million. We also plan this year to up our comms advocacy and organizing capacity. We brought on a coalition director who used to be the organizing director at CIPC and is a wonderful person to work with, Carlos Amador. We plan to build the tent of the coalition, building up the membership, especially in key districts. Strengthening the national movement. We're also in conversations with the coalitions and campaigns in Washington State and New York so that we can kind of align on messaging and tactics. Really making sure that we're talking about this as something that goes beyond COVID. Even though we know COVID is still around, this is about so much more than that. When there's climate disasters or if there's a potential recession, the people who are going to be hardest hit are those who do not have access to that safety net. And also this is really important, as Bianca will tell you, to small businesses and industries who, you know, are subject to that same economic volatility. And those benefits are really a way to make sure that people can get back to work. And we are also, you know, we're going into this with eyes wide open. We're preparing for continued budget shortfalls and thinking through, you know, when push comes to shove, are there things we can do to get us a step further, even if we don't get our budget request this year. So we're just, you know, continuing to do that research and as always, continuing to build the leadership and power of workers. So that is our plan for this year. Happy to answer questions.
Woo! Is anyone else feeling totally fired up today? Okay. Thank you, Sasha. Any questions for Sasha? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it into the chat. Yes, Bianca.
I don't have a question per se, but I would just like to flag, because all of us are obviously, you know, change makers in some way, shape, or form on this call, that I think, you know, unemployment insurance in California is just in desperate need of reform in general. There are numerous efforts to expand UI to cover more workers, to better reflect our modern economy, and just wanted to flag for the group that if additional programs are put forward in the 2023 session, I would be more than happy to chat with folks about that, because I think just in general, unemployment insurance in California needs to be reformed.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, so everyone make sure that you are putting in your, sliding your bar and telling us how you feel about stuff. We're gonna continue moving on. The next step is building on the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program. And Jim has had to hop off, I believe. However, he asked me to read out just a few comments on this proposal. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump right into that if that's okay with folks. Okay, I'm seeing nodding from Andrea, which is where I take my direction from. So, you know, there was a really wonderful presentation on guaranteed income earlier today, and there's just been wonderful presentations on all sorts of stuff during this symposium. But so hopefully some of us were able to engage in that deeper dive, but the high level content is the California Guaranteed Income Pilot Project was created in the 2021 California budget, and it set aside $35 million to provide grants to guaranteed income pilot programs all across the state, with a primary focus on youth aging out of the foster care system and expecting mothers. And organizations receiving grants were required to secure matching funds from other sources totaling at least 50% of the amount received from the state. And the Guaranteed Income Pilot Project grants were awarded just 2 weeks ago. So it's very fresh in all of our minds. And it went to 7 programs across the state. And as part of sort of like shepherding that effort, initially, the California Guaranteed Income Community of Practice, which is this phenomenal group of individuals and organizations really coming together to share learning, best practices, communication tactics, challenges, etc. That community of practice is now pushing to expand the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program to allocate another sort of an additional $35 million, and adding new priority populations. Those populations potentially include unhoused people or students, people returning from incarceration, undocumented Californians, and indigenous communities. The expansion would also lower the match requirement to a 10% of the amount received from the state versus the 50 that was required in the previous funding amount, in order to make access to grants more equitable for organizations and communities with less access to traditional philanthropy. The expansion would be pursued simultaneously through legislation and a budget ask, so the dual track approach. So that is the information that has been shared with me, with a little bit of my own commentary peppered throughout, because I just can't resist. And if there's anyone else that is that was part of the earlier conversation on GI that's on the line that wants to chime in, add anything, share anything that I might have missed, please feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. And if not, we can go ahead and continue, but I don't want to give anything short shrift, so feel free to add stuff in the chat too if you've got it. Moving along, so MyPath's Youth Economic Bill of Rights, which stands for Real Youth Troubles and Solutions, ooh, love a good acronym, is a set of 9 policy recommendations developed for and by BIPOC youth. And let me see, who do we have on tap to talk about this? I had a list of everyone who was going to talk, and I cannot find it for the life of me, so I apologize that I'm not.
Alexis and
Hi.
Alexis,
Yes.
go for it.
Yeah.
Let me stop talking. It's all you.
Hi, this is Andrea Geis. I apologize, I'm off camera. I'm having internet issues. I'm the Director of Development at MyPath. We are a San Francisco-based nonprofit that designs, tests, and scales youth financial capability interventions to help BIPOC youth and young adults get on a path to economic mobility and wealth building. All of our models are designed for and by the youth that we serve, and since 2007, we've worked with over 30,000 youth across the nation. So I'm here today with my colleague, Alexis Moore, to present a bill that was developed by our Youth Power leaders. And Youth Power is a group of young adult leaders who are former MyPath participants and who are focused on driving advocacy and policy change. And through their engagements with various stakeholders, they are eliminating the barriers to youth financial inclusion and also working to activate allies. So I'm going to turn it over to Alexis, and she's going to be describing the bold bill with Youth Power has developed.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And hi, again, my name is Alexis Moore. I am a Youth Power Associate for MyPath, and I'm going to just be talking about the Youth Economic Bill of Rights and what they are. Alrighty. So basically, the Youth Economic Bill of Rights is a set of 9 recommendations. And just before I go into what they are, those 9 recommendations are, the reason why it was created, it was by Youth Power members. It was created to fight back the systematic barriers that youth face on their everyday lives. Whether they're growing up and they're like, I want my own bank account, due to numerous reasons of maybe their parent don't have access to or resources or even have the financial education to be like, open a bank account for them. Or maybe they're in a check system, etc., right? And we're talking about underserved youth, BIPOC youth, low-income youth here, or undocumented youth as well. And just from their everyday lives and their journey, these 9 recommendations help them fight back those barriers that they face, whether if it's resources, more financial inclusion as well, and just building their financial status as they're growing up, right? So here I would say the 9 recommendations is basically, one of them are, give me one second. Camera seems kind of funny. The right to guaranteed income paired with financial education. So for me as a youth, before I was a staff now, I was in the savings to credit program. And if I didn't have both of those paired together, I wouldn't know what my first financial journey will look like. I don't think I would have the right knowledge of how to build my own credit, right? Or the right knowledge of like how to budget or how to save. So getting the right to guaranteed income paired with financial education is key. And then the second one, the right to be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit. That's also very beneficial for youth because it's a rule saying that you have to be over 24 years old to actually be eligible for the EITC credit. And most of us are students. And the rule there is if you're a student, you have to wait till after you're 24. If you're not a student, then 19. So that's pretty critical because that's basically saying like, if you're not in college, you eligible for it. But what about college students? They need this extra income when they're getting their tax returns because of college books, online programs that cost $100 now. I mean, there's so much more eating. That money can really be beneficial for them. And then also the right to a national model for youth banking. When we say the right to a national model for youth banking, we have our own youth banking standards, which I was able to utilize as a youth in the savings program, which basically gave me the independent freedom I needed to open my own bank account with guidance to make sure I'm not, over spending my money, having savings goal, and etc. Also, the right to easily accessible credit reports. That one is super critical because after I graduated the savings program and I was 17 going on 18, they helped me build my credit, right? And not just me just going and swim and sink. No, I had guidance with one-on-one financial mentoring, which is also the right to quality financial coaching is number 7. That's also part of our Youth Economic Bill of Rights. So all of our 9 recommendations just overall is basically helping youth break that cycle of generational wealth not being accessed. For lower income youth, we don't have access to financial resources to help us obtain our credit reports, to help us obtain the financial education to save, or just the resources in general. And for lower income or underserved youth, this helps all 9 recommendations get us to a better pathway. And catch my GIF here because it's my path, right? So a better pathway for us to get our own wealth. And basically, Americans attain wealth by getting our own house. For me, after being in this program, just personally speaking, after I graduated and had 690 on my credit report from 0 history to a 690, it was super, super powerful because now I got my car loan. I'm working on getting my own apartment. And eventually I'm looking up the resources now because I'm getting paid enough and a good job to talking about getting a home loan. And I just want to take a pause now and just say really quick, I want to open up a question for you guys. Think about when you're a young person, right? And how was it when you first opened your own bank account? Did you open your own bank account when you were 18 years old or was eligible for a bank account age requirement, or did your parent did under their account? I just want to open up the floor for that. Anybody could be in the chat.
Well, I know for my part, my mom did open a bank account for me, and I had my little passbook back when that existed. But I think that was an attempt by my mom to be supportive and trying to teach me about money. But we were struggling. We were really struggling, and there were lots of times that I did not control my own money. It went towards the household. And I think I shared previously that, I learned many years later that my mom had opened up some credit cards, in my name when I was a youth. So I have passed zero judgment and shade on that. I think my mom did an excellent job because, our family is healthy and vibrant.
Yep.
And, but, it did create, I did have to deal with changes to my credit report
Right.
and having to get stuff off. And it took a lot. It really took a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing your story on that. I really appreciate it. That's one of our stories that we have for our low-income youth. Another story was also my best friend, her mom, and this is due because they don't have the financial education or didn't know back then, right? It's not because it's ill intent or anything. It's just that, you do what you got to do to make ends meet. And for my best friend's mom, she took out a Comcast cable out of their children's name and couldn't pay the cable bill and had to move on to a different cable company. But that ruins their credit, right? Or that ruins their just basically reputation. If they want to get Comcast, they're going to say, wait, hold up, what is this? And by the time that youth is 18 years old, they're not going to know what that is until they go ask their mom, or basically go through this whole journey of like, what is this, and why did you open up in my name? But really the parent just didn't know any better. No ill intent, right? And that's always what's happening with lower income, just families in general. It's misinformation that we go and do these things and now we have to do these repairs, right? But then we don't have the resources to do these repairs. And that can go with credit as well. So that's why the Youth Economic Bill of Rights is super important. It helps prevent all of that even starting with the young person, starting to get that in their brains of why. Oh, you have a question?
Oh, please finish your thought. I'm putting myself in the queue.
Okay. But this is why we created this, to prevent all that and just start with the young person so they can tell their mom and dad, hey, I'm learning this in my program. That's not a good idea, Mom. You know why? X, Y, and Z. And we had our youth do that before too. And I want to get to your question too, because I know we're running low on time.
Thank you. I know the little slightly moving hand is very urgent feeling. My goodness. So my question is just to get a sense of, is this something that is going to be, you're proposing to be introduced in legislation? Is there any cost associated with it? Is, just a little bit more of what's the policy pathway for us in our consideration of prioritization? That would be helpful for me.
Yes. Also, right now, we just came back, me and 2 other Youth Power members just came back from DC, Washington, DC, to talk to the chairman of FDIC on the Youth Economic Bill of Rights. And at first it was very intimidating. And I'm like, oh, I hope, he gets what we're talking about. Because, everybody in government are way older than us. So I'm thinking maybe it's hard for him to understand how it was back when he was a young person or whatnot. And we got the go, if this comes up to his seat, he's going to support. So that was a big one. And right now, me and my path and our CEO and Youth Power members are just creating a 2-year plan on how to get this legislation pushed. And we're going federal level.
Gotcha. Super helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments from folks? Thank you, Alexis, for sharing your perspective. And I wish I had some of the ability to speak that you have when I was your age. I don't know how old you are. I'm just making a few generalized assumptions here, but man, yeah, go to DC anytime and talk about these things. That'd be great.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm not really feeling too well, but I wanted to make sure I made the meeting today because I'm super passionate about this. And me and my youth power members are super passionate about this. So I want to make sure I'm here, even though I feel kind of a little bug going on. It's winter time.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks are right there with you. And so I say thank you to everyone that's showing up with maybe at not a full tank of gas, so to speak. Okay. So I think we're going to go ahead and move along. We're about 17 minutes out from the top of the hour when we are going to be wrapping this conversation. So next up is beneficial owner transparency. Name who actually owns the LLC, LLP, and REITs. I don't know what all those acronyms stand for. I know kind of what they mean. That buy rental, residential, and commercial properties. Let's get some transparency. Who is on top to talk?
I don't think that we were able to get Doni here from CRC, so I will chime in on this one on their behalf. So the thing that really stands out to me about this proposal is that right now, if tenants want to organize or get in touch with the actual person who owns their property, they can only find out. I'm having an echo. Maybe could you mute yourself? Yeah, thanks. You can only find out to the level of whatever corporate entity, whether it's a limited liability company, a real estate income, I'm trying to pretend like I know what REIT stands for, I used to. And increasingly we know since the 2007-2008 mortgage meltdown that you know, a lot of these companies were the ones who bought up the properties when they went into foreclosure. And so increasingly you have these companies, Veritas, BlackRock, all of these corporate entities who own our residential housing as well as our commercial properties. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to rent you know, a property for your business, increasingly you are dealing with corporate property owners and not an individual person, which, you know, if you've ever been a renter, you know how hard that makes it to get any sort of repairs or to deal with any sort of issue that's going on with your property. So what this piece of policy legislation would do is it would disclose the name of the individual people who actually own whatever corporate entity owns your property. And to me, the most mind-blowing aspect of this is that this is information that the state already collects. So it would all we would be asking is for the state to make that information available to the renters of residential properties and commercial properties. They already have this information, they already collect it, it's known, but by making it available, then you can just imagine what, you know, we always talk about, you know, put the sunlight on it, you know, put people in the spotlight, and suddenly they start to act right. So I think that this is, you know, that is the spirit of this legislation. And if we were able to have that kind of transparency, I think that we would immediately start seeing people act right, but it would also make it possible for organizers and tenants to get in touch and to make their case, you know, make a more effective case for whatever their housing and property needs are. So this is something that is being pushed by California Reinvestment Coalition. I think they're putting a lot of resources behind this, and I think it's one of these, you know, a piece that would not cost additional money from anyone, but has the potential to transform the residential and commercial property market by allowing more of that transparency and accountability. So I don't know if we have any questions or thoughts.
Bianca.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to flag that, you know, this bill was pushed by CRC this year, and it faced some pretty extreme opposition, ended up watering down the bill to something that didn't look anything like it was, and CRC could no longer support it in that form. I think that these kinds of transparency initiatives are incredibly important. One of the reasons, one of the things that I was trying to figure out this year is trying to find some kind of data on exactly how this impacts low-income Californians, including small businesses. And the fact that it's so not transparent made it difficult for folks to even find, you know, hard data on how this impacts our constituencies. And so I think just transparency as like a basis can really go far in addressing some of the issues that have been raised by other folks on the CABC coalition, right? We were talking about issues with housing in the earlier panel. Well, if we don't even know who owns what, it's going to be very difficult for us to make inroads that's backed by data and research. And so I just wanted to flag that this can be seemingly complicated, but on its face, it is a transparency bill, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. Alexis, yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry, it's not really a question. I just really want to say, can please keep doing this work, because like I said before in my presentation, I'm really looking for a place right now, and my best friend is her mom and herself is basically her family is undocumented, and she was having some worries about when her mom moves and stuff like that. So this is really good work, and just keep it going.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really good work. And Bianca, thank you for that additional sort of background on, how the bill progressed and that didn't progress last year. I think that's really important framing, as is the fact that this doesn't have a big cost associated with it. It has, the risks associated are kind of, as Andrea was saying, is the fear of folks that get to hang out in the shadows being brought into the light, which we all know is never a bad thing. So it might be a challenge, but it's never a bad thing. So I think that is the extent of the policy priorities that we had. And you will see on the screen here, though, a big, good, important question. What other policy ideas belong on this list? What's missing, y'all? What did we not talk about that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this wasn't there? There's a link that you can go follow and submit some additional whatever ideas you might have. Obviously, we're available. You know how to get a hold of Andrea. You should know how to get a hold of a lot of us. If there's something that's missing, feel free to flag it. But I think probably the easiest way is to just go through and click on that form to submit additional ideas. Look how easy we make it. I mean,
yeah.
So I think that's kind of wraps it for me and my role in this session. But I just really wanted to say thank you to everyone that shared information. I think there's going to be some follow-up conversations that we are going to hopefully facilitate within CABC. And this, as Andrea mentioned, this is going to remain open. So if you are like, I got to really think about that one and come back to it, you can do that. You don't have to, your sliding scale can move. We are going to take the next month to sort of really consider and do a little bit more deep dive. And then that will really help us set our agenda so that we can launch in 2023 early with clear priorities, clear statements about our values and our collective voice. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and put myself back on mute and hand it back over to Andrea.
Thank you, Anna, for facilitating that. I think I saw Bianca's hand.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to flag just for a second for folks, there is a program that's currently in existence called the California Paid Family Leave Small Business Grant. This is a program that we've been working really hard to raise awareness about. It provides to small business owners $2,000 per employee that takes paid family leave. And so I know that paid family leave has been an initiative that California Asset Building Coalition has supported in the past. This grant program, I think, goes a long way in raising awareness about the paid leave program among workers in general. B, in generating support from employers, which I believe are the one of the biggest ways that workers find out about this kind of benefit in the first place. And 3, help small business owners that are providing quality jobs and working with their workforce to allow them to take the leave that they need. Unfortunately, there is no funding for this program next year, and I am very much behind the ball on this, but if folks are interested in supporting a budget request for a program like this, I think it would be a relatively easy lift coming from someone who's never run a bill before or so. But I know some of you have, so just wanted to flag the Paid Family Leave Small Business Grant. Was supported by the governor's Paid Family Leave Task Force. It has great advocates at Department of Labor and EDD. kind of EDD when they know about it, and just wanted to flag that as a possible opportunity for 2023.
Thank you, Bianca. If you have any links that you can share in the chat, that would be helpful. Just a reminder that all of the sessions for the symposium were recorded. So if you missed any or want to hear again, maybe something that caught your ear, but you want to listen to it again, you can just come back to the symposium website and you can watch all of the recordings and forward them to other people if you think that if you heard something that you think someone else should hear, you can go ahead and do that. So I really appreciate everyone who stuck through to the final part of this conversation. We had an amazing turnout for this symposium. We covered so many issues, and like I keep saying, CABC is a place for all of us who are fighting for our communities on housing issues, employment and wage issues, entrepreneurship challenges, folks who are hyper incarcerated and who face hyper financial fee enforcement. So many important issues are affecting our families and our communities that we fight with, and that many of us are from. Take a look again at that research that we released yesterday. 64% of the advocates in our movement are from the communities that they work with. We have deep, deep ties. This is personal for so many of us. And it's important that we have a space like CABC where we can come together and see what everybody else is doing, because we don't always, we stay so focused in our lane that we forget to look up and, number one, see how huge we are. We are a huge movement in California, and we are doing so much. So periodically check in with us, see what your counterparts are doing in other sectors. As I mentioned in one of the panels, we're going to be developing a directory so that in the next several months, hopefully, anyone would be able to come to a website and find out who's working on what issue and what geography and what community, and we can finally start, referring to each other as much as we, should always have been able to. So we're here for you. We're here for the whole movement. For collaboration and honestly for friendship and love and support across all of these sectors, because this is passionate, this is personal to so many of us, and it can be hard when you're feeling isolated. It can feel really good when you're able to connect with folks who are just doing the same thing you are. They're just fighting for their communities, fighting for what's right. And, it's important that we have that kind of solidarity between us. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the 2022 CABC Symposium, The Power of Us. Stay tuned for an email where you will get a chance to give us some feedback on what you'd like to see next year. Maybe we should do it earlier in the year so that not so many of us are sick and under the weather trying to do this work. But yeah, just tell us what you want to see next year. And with that, we're just going to end a couple minutes early. I love you. Thank you. And stay in the fight. Get some rest, everyone.